Welcome to The Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today, we're embarking on an in-depth exploration of the most pressing and surprising stories from around the globe. We're drawing insights from a broad spectrum of articles, research, reports, you name it. Our mission, as always, is to navigate the news without the noise, giving you the key nuggets of knowledge, and asking, what does this really mean for us, and how does it all connect?
That's precisely our aim. We're here to sift through the layers of information, connecting dots that might not seem obvious at first glance, and offering crucial context, multiple perspectives, from the intricate geopolitical chess matches playing out on the world stage to groundbreaking scientific discoveries, and even the often overlooked realities of our rapidly changing environment. We're dedicated to helping you uncover the deeper significance of global events. So get ready to unpack some truly fascinating and sometimes pretty unexpected developments.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We've got a really compelling mix of stories today. We're starting with something, well, utterly unexpected, Russian lawmakers debating witchcraft, and then moving into the shifting sands of global trade and some truly jaw-dropping sports moments.
Yeah, quite the range.
First up in our geopolitical segment, we head to Russia for something that, well, genuinely made me pause. It seems Russian lawmakers have been debating the merits of banning certain esoteric services. Wishes in the State Duma. You heard that right. It's certainly not a headline you see every day.
No, it really isn't. But it's a fascinating glimpse into certain, let's say, domestic currents within Russia. A Russian parliamentary committee recently declined to advance a proposed bill from back in April. This legislation sought to prohibit advertising and online promotion of what it broadly termed esoteric services. So everything from astrology and alchemy to, yes, even witchcraft.
Whoa.
The bill was introduced by a group of MPs, including Nina Ostinina. Their stated aim was to amend advertising laws to block online access, promotion of what they basically called charlatanry. They argued these services often exploit vulnerable individuals, operate without proper oversight, creating a societal problem.
Okay, so if the concern was about exploitation, why didn't it pass? Or were they just, I don't know, wary of getting into the whole mystical thing, or was it more practical?
It was far more practical than magical backlash, let's put it that way. The State Duma committee reviewing the bill opposed it. They cited vague terminology in the proposal itself. They had genuine concerns about, potential misinterpretations, that these could lead to overreach.
Right.
And the suppression of lawful activities, maybe even hitting legitimate cultural practices or academic study by mistake.
Oh, okay.
Plus, Russia already has existing laws under consumer protection statutes that regulate these kinds of services. So making additional broadly worded restrictions seemed maybe redundant and potentially infringing on individual freedoms.
Makes sense.
But despite this initial setback, Ostinina and her colleagues have said they plan to revise and reintroduce it. So they seem pretty persistent.
And it's clear there's a significant market for these services, isn't there? I remember reading a survey, I think it was VTSM, the Russian Public Opinion Research Center.
Yeah.
It indicated a notable portion of the Russian public has, used esoteric services at least once.
That's a crucial piece of context, absolutely.
Right.
Valery Fedorov, the director of VTSM, went even further. He attributed this popularity to something quite provocative, actually.
Oh.
He called it declining intellect resulting from widespread technology usage, including the internet and artificial intelligence.
Wow, it's quite a statement.
It's a strong claim, yeah. But what's really fascinating here is how this sort of local Russian debate touches upon a much broader, universal anxiety. It connects directly to this global conversation about technology's impact on, human cognition, critical thinking, discernment.
Huh. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah, in an age of information overload where truth and misinformation can just blend seamlessly online, our societies, regardless of their political system, becoming more susceptible to narratives, whether they're ancient superstitions or modern conspiracy theories.
Things that offer simple answers in complex times.
Exactly. It's a surprising parallel, really, between Russian domestic policy and a very Western concern about the digital age.
It's a strange pivot then, isn't it? From Russian lawmakers wrestling with ancient superstitions, we turn to a very real and devastating modern conflict right on their doorstep. The war in Ukraine continues to reshape alliances, challenge global norms. What are we seeing now in terms of Russia's evolving relationships?
Well, this takes us directly into Russia's strategic alliances, which are definitely hardening. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un recently voiced what was described as unconditional support for Russia in its conflict with Ukraine. Now, this isn't entirely new, but it builds on this accelerating military cooperation. Remember that defense pact signed in June 2024.
Right.
What's particularly significant now are the reports about the deployment of North Korean troops, supposedly to assist Russian forces in the Kursk region, which is right near the Ukrainian border.
Troops, that's a big step.
It would be a huge step. If confirmed at scale, it represents a substantial escalation in their military support. And it could have implications for international law, too.
And Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov, he seemed to echo that sentiment pretty strongly during a visit to Pyongyang, right?
He certainly did. Lavrov described the collaboration as a symbol of invincible brotherhood between Russia and North Korea. Beyond just mirroring sentiments, the strategic significance of Lavrov's language there, it signals a deepening, almost ideological alignment.
Yeah.
It's a deliberate message to the West that Russia isn't isolated. And it plays well domestically, too, reinforcing this narrative of strong allies against perceived NATO threats. This kind of explicit backing definitely impacts diplomatic dynamics and could further polarize global opinions, sort of solidifying an anti-Western bloc.
Meanwhile, on the Ukrainian side, there's a really interesting and kind of pragmatic proposal coming from a familiar face, Valery Zaluzhny.
Yes, Ukraine's former top military commander, now ambassador to the UK.
Right. He argued in an op-ed that Ukraine should formally request surplus and outdated U.S. weapons, specifically mentioned Hellfire missiles from U.S. stockpiles.
Yeah, and this raises a really important question. Could such a move actually strengthen Ukraine's defenses while allowing the U.S. to efficiently manage its aging stockpiles?
Good point.
Zaluzhny highlighted that transferring this kind of weaponry would impose minimal additional costs on the U.S. because these arms would otherwise need disposal, potentially even saving the U.S. money on demilitarization.
That's a clever angle.
It's a very pragmatic approach, especially considering the context. Ukraine has already received, over $66 billion in U.S. military aid?
Yeah, a huge amount.
And much of it has been described by various sources as downgraded or outdated. Remember the M1 Abrams tanks delivered in 2023? Reports suggested they were quickly destroyed, partly because they lacked the advanced armor the U.S. forces used.
Right, that caused some debate.
It fueled a debate about the effectiveness, the appropriateness of the aid. Meanwhile, Russia consistently criticizes these Western arms deliveries. They say it just exacerbates and prolongs the conflict, and they often frame it as, direct Western involvement in a proxy war.
So we've seen Russia's domestic quirks, the shifting alliances in the immediate conflict zone. But stepping back, how does President Putin really frame Russia's role in the world? What's his big narrative for why Russia's acting this way, especially towards the West?
You're right to ask that, because Russia's stance isn't just about the current conflict. Putin frames it as a much larger historical grievance. He attributes the ongoing tensions with Western nations to geopolitical ambitions, not ideological differences. His argument really centers on the idea that the West disregarded Russia's strategic interests even after the Soviet Union dissolved.
The post-Cold War period.
Exactly. Putin has repeatedly criticized Western nations for, in his view, failing to honor promises, especially regarding NATO's eastward expansion. He claims that happened despite explicit reassurances given back in the early 90s.
A common point of contention.
A major one. He asserts the West only supported global initiatives when they were directed against Russia, even accusing them of backing separatist and even terrorist movements detrimental to Russian interests.
Strong accusations.
Very. He specifically cited Ukraine's ambitions to join NATO and Western military support as key triggers for the current conflict, highlighting Russia's unmet demand for security guarantees and a neutral status for Ukraine. So this narrative positions Russia as a victim, essentially, responding to perceived historical slights and existential threats.
And while that narrative plays out with the West, we're seeing Russia deepening ties elsewhere, specifically with China.
Absolutely. At the same time, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov recently met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Beijing. The aim was explicitly to strengthen bilateral cooperation. Both ministers expressed significant satisfaction with what they called their country's comprehensive partnership. They emphasized their aligned positions on a whole variety of critical global issues.
Like what?
Well, relations with the U.S., the Ukraine conflict itself, tensions on the Korean Peninsula, even the Israel-Iran situation.
They're coordinating across the board.
It seems so. Wang Yi explicitly emphasized that the Sino-Russian relationship is, quote, one of the most stable and strategically valuable in global affairs. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, these discussions show a remarkably coordinated approach between Moscow and Beijing. They're responding together to ongoing international instability and challenges. It's a clear signal of their strategic alignment, aimed at building a multipolar world order, challenging the existing Western-dominated system. This could shape global trade routes, diplomatic efforts, military postures for, well, decades to come.
And just quickly, on a related note, Moscow dismissed some U.S. media reports about Putin and Iran, called them disinformation.
Yes, that's right. Moscow dismissed reports from Axios that claimed Putin urged Iran to agree to a nuclear deal requiring zero uranium enrichment following that brief Israel-Iran conflict. They labeled it a disinformation campaign. Russia maintains its official position, support for a diplomatic resolution to the Iranian nuclear issue, aligning with those long-standing international efforts to prevent nuclear proliferation in the region.
Okay, let's shift our gaze now to another highly volatile region, the Middle East. We're seeing continued tragic events, particularly in Gaza. The humanitarian situation remains just dire.
It really does. Emergency officials reported a deeply tragic incident recently. At least 10 people, including 6 children, were killed in an Israeli airstrike while they were just waiting to fill water containers in central Gaza.
Oh, terrible.
Yeah. Widely reported by the BBC, Al Jazeera, Reuters, their bodies were taken to Nusrat's Al-Auda hospital in central Gaza. The Israeli military has since admitted to an error in this specific incident, which is a significant admission given the ongoing conflict.
And that came just after another devastating attack.
Exactly. This happened just one day after what was described as Israel's deadliest bombing in recent memory. That resulted in 110 deaths, including 34 people who were awaiting humanitarian aid in Rafah.
Rafah, in the south, where so many people have fled.
Precisely. A city that's become a refuge for displaced Palestinians. These events just underscore the horrifying scale of the humanitarian crisis, the devastating impact on civilians, especially vulnerable groups like children who are disproportionately affected by the scarcity of basics, the constant threat of violence.
And this is happening alongside increasing demolitions in Rafah itself, which is raising alarms internationally.
That's right. Israel's increased demolitions in Rafah, a city now swollen with over 1 million displaced people. These are seen by many international observers and human rights groups as part of a larger, deliberate plan for a forced transfer of Gaza residents.
Forced transfer, that's a very serious accusation.
It is. Reports indicate hundreds of families have been affected, their properties destroyed, leaving them with nowhere to go. Rob Geist-Pinfold, an international security lecturer from King's College London, stated pretty emphatically that relocating 600,000 Gazans, which was the estimated number at one point, in just 60 days, is simply not possible without catastrophic humanitarian consequences.
Right.
This escalation has raised profound concerns about displacement, forced migration, severe human rights violations. Some analyses even mention the potential for ethnic cleansing.
And there are questions about Israel's broader motivations, too.
Yes, various analyses are questioning Israel's motivations to prolong the war on Gaza, exploring how it might ultimately serve Israel's long-term security interests or strategic goals in the region. It highlights the complexity of the different interpretations of the conflict's objectives.
Beyond Gaza, there's also been direct confrontation between Israel and Iran. Recent reports mentioned the Iranian president was injured.
Yes, this marks a sort of new level of direct engagement. Iranian President Pezeshkian was reportedly lightly wounded while escaping an Israeli attack on July 13th. Reports state he was forced to escape through an emergency hatch, which indicates the severity of the strike.
Wow.
And the BBC specifically reported that an earlier strike, on June 16th, targeted the Iranian president in a manner very similar to an assassination operation. This signals a really dramatic escalation of the shadow war between the two nations, moving into direct high-level targeting.
That sounds incredibly serious.
Yeah.
How is Iran responding? Is there any talk of diplomacy amidst all this? It seems like such a stark contrast.
It is a stark contrast, and it raises that critical question. Can a diplomatic path forward truly exist amidst such escalating military actions and strong political rhetoric?
Yeah.
Well, despite these recent attacks, Iran is expressing a surprising optimism, actually, for a potential nuclear deal with the U.S., signaling a willingness to resume negotiations, but under the specific condition of no further attacks.
Interesting condition.
It suggests Iran might be seeking de-escalation through diplomatic channels, even while under direct military pressure. On the other hand, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu expressed confidence that a deal to secure the release of hostages can be reached. But he also stated that Iran is in deep trouble after recent conflicts with Israel.
So, Very different tones there.
Very different. This rhetoric highlights the huge chasm between their positions. Iran potentially seeking a diplomatic off-ramp tied to a halt in attacks, while Israel maintains a hardline stance, asserts its military advantage. The rhetoric certainly suggests little room for compromise, yet Iran's talk of a deal hints at maybe underlying complexities, perhaps a desire to ease internal pressures or international isolation.
Now let's shift to the Indo-Pacific region.
Yeah.
The U.S. is making moves there to solidify alliances, especially with rising tensions involving China.
Yes, the United States is actively urging its key Indo-Pacific allies, specifically Japan and Australia, to clarify and define their roles, specifically in the event of a military conflict with China over Taiwan.
Asking them to clarify their roles, that's quite direct.
It is. This request, reported by the Financial Times via RT, signifies a really concrete step in U.S. strategic planning. The Pentagon, through figures like Undersecretary of Defense Elbridge Colby, has been conducting operational planning, military exercises with both nations, all aimed at preparing for a Taiwan-related contingency. This proactive push has reportedly taken Tokyo and Canberra by surprise. Particularly because the U.S. hasn't provided Taiwan with a formal security guarantee, so it leaves its allies potentially bearing direct risks without that explicit commitment from Washington.
So the U.S. is pushing allies to commit, but without offering a clear security umbrella to Taiwan itself. What's Australia saying about this?
Well, Australia's Defence Industry Minister Pat Conroy declined to speculate on hypothetical scenarios. He emphasized that, quote, only Australia can decide its involvement in any conflict.
Maintaining sovereignty.
Exactly. It highlights that common tension in alliances. Partners plan together, but the ultimate decision on military intervention remains sovereign. And this is all happening against a backdrop of escalating tensions in the Taiwan Strait, especially after the election of President Lai Ching-te in Taiwan, who is seen as pro-independence.
And U.S.-China relations remain tense anyway.
Extremely fragile, amid ongoing trade disputes, tech rivalry, competition for resources in the Indo-Pacific. And despite the U.S. acknowledging China's sovereignty over Taiwan under the One China policy,
which is a complex policy itself.
Very complex, acknowledges Beijing's claim but allows unofficial relations. The U.S. continues to supply arms to Taipei. Beijing views this as a direct challenge to its sovereignty, further straining ties.
And Russia is definitely watching all this closely, adding its own commentary.
Indeed. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov also issued a strong warning against expanding NATO infrastructure into the Indo-Pacific. He criticized what he sees as increasing military activities by the U.S., South Korea, and Japan.
What specifically?
He pointed to recent joint military exercises involving nuclear-capable assets like B-52H bombers, arguing these maneuvers threaten stability not just on the Korean peninsula, but across broader Northeast Asia. This reflects a shared concern with China about perceived Western encirclement and military buildup in their neighborhood, further solidifying that Moscow-Beijing alignment against a unipolar world order.
All right, let's pivot now to domestic politics, specifically in the United States, focusing on former President Donald Trump's actions and controversies. His America First agenda keeps shaking up global trade, but what's really interesting, maybe baffling, is that Wall Street seems to be just shrugging it off. There's a real paradox here, isn't there, between the headlines and the market reaction?
It's a striking disconnect, yeah. President Trump announced significant 30% tariffs on goods from the EU and Mexico set for August. This is squarely aimed at addressing perceived trade imbalances, protecting domestic industries. It's classic Trump protectionism.
And the reaction from the EU and Mexico?
Jointly and vocally critical. They see them as punitive measures that will inevitably hurt established trade relationships, economies on both sides. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stated the EU would delay its own countermeasures until early August, expressing a hope for a negotiated resolution, but also signaling they're ready to retaliate if talks fail.
And the market's take on all this potential trade war talk?
Largely unfazed, according to the Washington Post and RT, investors, maybe having grown accustomed to this kind of rhetoric, seem to be downplaying the potential impact.
Why do you think that is?
Well, maybe reflecting confidence in the market's resilience, or perhaps viewing it more as a negotiating tactic to gain leverage, rather than a substantial, irreversible risk. It suggests a perceived detachment between political rhetoric and actual market impact, at least in the short term. Traders might just believe a deal will eventually be struck or the economic hit will be absorbed.
Another area where Trump's been active is regarding the Federal Reserve, the U.S. central bank. There's been tension there, specifically over renovation plans.
Yes, the Fed quietly responded to criticisms from the Trump administration about its renovation plans. This tension really highlights that delicate dance between the Federal Reserve, our central bank, tasked with keeping prices stable and employment high, ideally free from political influence, and the government.
Right, that independence is key.
It's crucial because it allows them to make tough long-term decisions, like on interest rates, without being swayed by short-term political cycles. But there's speculation. Figures like Kevin Hassett, a former top economic advisor, suggest Trump is considering firing Fed Chairman Jerome Powell over these renovations.
Firing the Fed chair over renovation.
Well, Axios reported the White House saw the renovations as an opportunity to replace Powell. So that Fed independence is constantly tested by political pressure from administrations wanting the Fed to align with their economic goals. It's a fascinating power struggle.
From policy to personality. Trump has also reignited some long-standing feuds, notably with Rosie O'Donnell, and it escalated pretty quickly to a threat about her U.S. citizenship.
Yeah, that's a powerful and frankly concerning development. Trump threatened to revoke Rosie O'Donnell's U.S. citizenship. This was apparently triggered after O'Donnell publicly criticized his administration's handling of those catastrophic floods in Texas.
The ones with over 100 deaths.
Exactly, resulting in at least 129 deaths, 166 missing. She accused Trump of dismantling disaster preparedness systems. Trump responded on Truth Social, calling O'Donnell a threat to humanity, thinking she should stay in Ireland where she'd recently relocated.
And then the citizenship threat.
Claimed he was considering stripping her citizenship, despite the well-established legal impossibility of revoking birthright citizenship through executive action. The Supreme Court is very clear on that.
So it's legally baseless.
Completely. This is the latest in a years-long public feud, but it's notable because Trump has made similar legally questionable threats against others, like Elon Musk. If we connect this to the broader picture, it just adds to the political tension around Trump, particularly his approach to dissent, criticism from public figures.
It's incredibly harsh language, and like you said, a legally questionable threat. What does this tell us about the political climate overall? How public figures are using this kind of inflammatory language?
It signals a significant shift, really. This isn't just a personal feud. It's about the erosion of norms around political discourse, what's considered acceptable from a former head of state. When a figure like Trump makes these kinds of legally baseless threats, it can normalize that behavior. It could intimidate dissent, blur the lines between political speech and personal attacks.
Yeah.
It also raises questions about social media platforms amplifying such rhetoric without context or legal clarification. It suggests a political environment where strong, sometimes unfounded accusations are used as a primary tool to silence opposition, rather than engaging in actual policy debate.
And then there's the ongoing saga of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Trump weighed in on that, too, with some very strong claims.
Yes, President Trump urged his Medjugorje supporters to essentially forget about the Epstein files. He stated they were fabricated by Democrats like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. That was his claim. He unequivocally denied any cover-up in Jeffrey Epstein's 2019 jail death, which was officially ruled a suicide. And federal reports found no evidence of a client list, despite all the speculation.
But his allies are skeptical.
Despite the official findings, yes, Trump's allies have expressed deep skepticism about the official narrative. Controversy continues to swirl, particularly around a missing minute of surveillance footage from Epstein's cell. Some critics allege it was deliberately doctored.
And Trump called for investigations.
He further escalated by calling for federal agencies to investigate prominent Democratic figures and reiterated his unfounded claim that the 2020 election was rigged. FBI Director Kash Patel, however, has denied these conspiracy theories, calling them baseless. This ongoing dispute has allegedly caused internal tension within federal agencies. It highlights a deep division of narratives and trust within governmental structures themselves.
Our deep dive also brought up some interesting insights from Trend's Journal regarding political discontent and calls for change within the U.S. They certainly don't pull any punches. The first article we looked at was titled, "The Police State of America."
Right. That Trends Journal piece suggests profound concerns about what it sees as increasing encroachment on personal freedoms, growing authoritarian tendencies in the U.S. Issues often raised in this context include broad government surveillance programs, the increasing militarization of civilian police forces, and the implementation of measures that critics argue disproportionately impact civil liberties, often in the name of national security.
Like post-9/11 measures.
Exactly. Historically, the notion of a police state is often linked to things like the Patriot Act. Critics argue these compromise traditional rights and privacy for perceived safety. The article likely explores that delicate, often contentious balance between national security and personal freedoms, questioning whether that balance is shifted too far, maybe to the detriment of democratic principles. It raises that important question about the trade-off between security and liberty and where you draw the line to maintain a truly free society.
Following that theme, another Trends Journal article, America's Unconstitutional Wars. War with Iran next. This critiques U.S. involvement in wars that allegedly bypass Congress's constitutional role.
Yeah, this piece delves into that long-standing debate about the centralization of war powers in the U.S. presidency. It argues the executive branch has increasingly initiated conflicts without explicit congressional consent, effectively sidelining the legislative body's constitutional authority.
Citing historical examples.
Often cites historical precedents like Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan as conflicts initiated without formal declarations, relying instead on broader authorizations or presidential prerogative. This often brings up the 1973 War Powers Resolution. That was a law passed after Vietnam specifically meant to reassert Congress's authority.
To limit the president's power to commit troops.
Right. The article likely argues that a war with Iran, if initiated without that clear congressional stamp, would completely bypass that critical constitutional check. And it explores the risks associated with a hypothetical U.S.-Iran conflict, regional instability, unforeseen retaliations, impact on global security and energy markets.
And building on that, another article boldly states, U.S. NATO politicians, war is a profitable racket. Peace is a dirty crime. That's certainly a provocative perspective.
Very provocative. This title from Trends Journal suggests a strong criticism of U.S. and NATO politicians, accusing them of allegedly perpetuating war for monetary gains and possibly even vilifying peace efforts.
Harking back to that famous phrase.
Exactly. Major General Smedley Butler's famous 1935 phrase, "War is a racket." He critiqued the military-industrial complex for influencing foreign policy primarily for commercial gain, not national interest. The idea that peace is a dirty crime implies that efforts toward peace and diplomacy are viewed unfavorably, maybe even actively sabotaged, when they interfere with the profitable business of war, arms sales, geopolitical influence.
Wow.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, these perspectives really challenge readers to consider the ethical implications of profiting from war and the moral obligations of striving for peace, pushing for a reevaluation of military engagements through an economic lens, questioning the motivations behind long conflicts.
It sounds like Trends Journal is consistently challenging the status quo. They also had a piece titled, Plantation Workers of Slavelandia Lose Out in Trump's Tax Bill.
Another very strong title. This article critiques the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, TCJA, passed during Trump's presidency in 2017. The provocative metaphor, plantation workers, is used for contemporary lower-income workers who the article argues feel betrayed by the tax reforms, suggests a sense of economic servitude.
And Slavelandia.
That's a pejorative term used to depict the U.S. as a society with vast, entrenched wealth disparity. The core argument is that the TCJA disproportionately benefited the wealthy and large corporations much more than middle and lower income earners, thereby exacerbating existing inequality, failing to genuinely support the average working class American.
Focusing on specific changes.
Yeah, critiques revolve around changes like decreasing the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%, alterations to individual income tax brackets, emphasizing that while it might have spurred some short-term corporate boosts, it arguably lacked long-term equitable support for the working poor and widened the income gap.
And finally, from them, a strong critique of media reporting on international hostilities. Media prostitutes call Israel-US unprovoked attacks on Iran a conflict. Salente, it's all-out war.
Right. This Trends Journal article critiques how certain media outlets report on hostilities between Israel, U.S., and Iran. The inflammatory term prostitute is used by the author to accuse media of serving specific interests, being influenced by powerful entities, rather than reporting impartially.
In Gerald Salente's view.
Gerald Salente, the trends forecaster, explicitly frames the situation as all-out war, directly contrasting with media that he claims downplay the severity by merely calling it a conflict. This perspective argues for a more accurate, unvarnished representation of these aggressive actions. It suggests a broader definition of what constitutes war, extending beyond traditional battlefields or formal declarations, implying consistent, unprovoked attacks are, in reality, acts of war.
So it raises questions about media's role.
It raises an important question about the media's role in shaping public perception of conflicts and the responsibility of journalists to accurately convey the gravity of military engagements.
Beyond the U.S., there are some significant political developments unfolding globally. Changes in governance, autonomy. Let's start with Argentina. President Javier Milei faced a big challenge to his austerity agenda.
He did. On July 10th, Argentina's President Milei experienced his most significant political defeat since taking office. The Senate passed a series of bills directly challenging his core austerity agenda,
How did that happen?
largely due to an opposition coalition that gained unexpected support from 10 provincial governors. This coalition approved bills mandating the federal government share tax revenues, including fuel taxes, with the provinces. They also managed to increase retiree benefits, something Milei had previously vetoed.
Wow, overturning a veto.
Yeah, and declared emergencies in disability services, and for Bahia Blanca, a major port city hit hard by storms. These actions represent a direct pushback against Milei's radical economic reforms and fiscal tightening.
How did Milei react? And what about the markets?
Milei defiantly pledged to veto the bills again and challenge them in court. He reaffirmed his commitment to maintaining a fiscal surplus that's key to Argentina's IMF agreement.
Right.
His party, La Libertad Avanza, plans to run independent candidates in future elections. This further strains relations with what he controversially calls collaborationist governors, signals a deepening political divide. The financial repercussions were immediate and negative. Argentina's main stock index, the S&P Merval, dropped 2.2% the next day. Sharp declines in financial stocks. Sovereign bonds fell. The peso continued its downward slide against the dollar. Signals real investor concern.
So it's an evolving power struggle.
Absolutely. It casts significant doubt on Milei's ability to maintain economic control amid growing social and regional pressures, especially with crucial midterm elections coming up.
Moving across the globe, France is granting more autonomy to its Pacific territory of New Caledonia.
Yes, France agreed to grant greater autonomy to New Caledonia, that island territory in the Pacific. It's been a French dependency since the 19th century. This new agreement designates it as the State of New Caledonia, but importantly, without offering full independence.
A state within France, essentially.
Kind of. This new status will be formally enshrined in the French Constitution. It provides New Caledonia with a unique nationality status in addition to French citizenship, and could potentially lead to some degree of international recognition. This deal comes after intense, violent unrest back in 2023.
What triggered that?
Electoral reforms that were perceived by many as marginalizing the indigenous Kanak population. That unrest sadly resulted in 14 deaths and an estimated $2 billion in economic damage.
So this deal aims to ease tensions.
That's the hope. A referendum on the agreement is scheduled for 2026, with French parliamentary approval expected by late 2025. It also includes a vital financial recovery plan for the nickel processing sector, crucial for New Caledonia's economy. And it aims to resolve those long-standing disputes over voter eligibility by limiting voting rights to residents of at least 10 years, addressing a key Kanak grievance.
In the UK, immigration policies are still a really hot-button issue, dominating headlines.
They are. Even with the Princess of Wales at Wimbledon getting lots of coverage, there's significant and ongoing criticism aimed at the UK Prime Minister, specifically over the government's failure to halt illegal immigration via small boats across the English Channel. The whole issue of border control, comprehensive immigration policies, it remains a highly prominent, contentious subject of debate across the UK. Reflects deep societal divisions, political pressures.
And we're seeing some interesting shifts in religious conservatism in Malaysia.
Yeah, Malaysia, a diverse Southeast Asian nation, is grappling with growing religious conservatism. There's been a notable surge in support for more conservative Islamic policies, particularly among younger, increasingly religious Malay voters. This indicates a significant societal trend influencing the country's political landscape, could potentially affect social freedoms, government policy down the line.
Finally, in South Africa, a big move against corruption at high levels.
Yes. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa ordered a formal inquiry into serious corruption allegations and, in a decisive move, placed the police minister on special leave. This action comes amid mounting public pressure to address persistent corruption within the police force and other government institutions. It underscores the government's renewed commitment to accountability, transparency, trying to restore public trust.
Let's loop back now to the economic landscape, specifically those global trade tensions we touched on earlier, focusing on Trump's proposed tariffs. It's a significant move, potential ripple effects everywhere.
As we discussed, yeah, President Trump announced substantial 30% tariffs on goods from the EU and Mexico set for August. Clear continuation of his America First protectionist agenda, aims to rebalance trade deficits, incentivize domestic production.
And the EU and Mexico still critical.
Jointly and unequivocally critical. They see it as punitive, inevitably hurting established trade relationships, economies on both sides. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the EU would delay its own countermeasures until early August, still publicly hoping for a negotiated resolution.
So the EU is still holding out hope for talks, but clearly preparing for the worst.
Exactly. RT and the Financial Times confirm this delay extends a previous 90-day suspension of EU counter tariffs, shows a cautious approach. However, von der Leyen explicitly warned these new U.S. measures, if implemented, could severely disrupt transatlantic supply chains,
Hitting businesses and consumers.
negatively impacting businesses relying on integrated global production and ultimately harming consumers through higher prices or reduced availability. Trump, reinforcing his narrative, keeps accusing the EU of unfair trade practices, agricultural subsidies, regulatory barriers, highlights those deep-seated disagreements driving these tariff threats, and the potential for a trade war that could really cool global economic growth.
Now let's look at that fascinating paradox in the markets, where what's happening on Wall Street doesn't quite seem to reflect real-world economic conditions.
Yeah, this is a point of significant debate, concern among economists. Those Trends Journal articles, markets up, economies down, world ramping for war, and market rally does not reflect economic reality, discuss this apparent paradox. Rising stock markets amidst deteriorating economic conditions, potentially increasing global military tensions. How does that happen?
Right.
Well, bullish stock markets prices rising can advance despite weak on-the-ground economic indicators due to several factors. Often includes accommodative monetary policy, like sustained low interest rates, maybe less stringent regulatory oversight. This provides abundant liquidity to the financial system.
So easy money flowing around.
Exactly. This liquidity encourages stock investment as alternative investments yield less. Regardless of the on-the-ground economic reality for everyday citizens or small businesses. Plus, during geopolitical uncertainty, certain industries like defense and commodities might actually see their value go up.
Because investors anticipate increased demand.
Precisely. Increased demand for weapons or raw materials. The articles argue for this strange disconnection between booming financial markets and the underlying economic well-being of the broader population, a disparity compounded by heightened war risks. This scenario can be driven by investor optimism about future long-term dividends, or just a lack of better investment alternatives. Reflects forward-looking confidence, not present-day reality.
So the big question
is the market's optimism truly sustainable if economic fundamentals are faltering? Or is this a signal of heightened risk, vulnerability to future shocks, a bubble waiting to burst?
Shifting to Russia's economy, we're seeing some interesting trends with their currency, the ruble. Seems to be strengthening.
That's right. Corporate demand for foreign currency in Russia has dropped significantly, reached its lowest level in nearly a year, according to RT, citing Bank of Russia data. The central bank attributes this to the strengthening ruble. It's been on an impressive upward trend for 7 straight months now, since December 2024.
What's driving that strength?
Primarily supported by the bank's tight monetary policy managing money supply, credit conditions to influence interest rates, and elevated key interest rates. This makes holding rubles more attractive, borrowing foreign currency more expensive. In June, Russian companies bought about 1.6 trillion rubles, roughly $20.5 billion USD worth of foreign currency. That's about half the monthly average for 2024.
A big drop.
Huge drop. Indicates a reduced need for foreign exchange. Additionally, household demand for foreign currency also decreased by 32% month-on-month. Suggests the ruble's strength and the central bank's tight monetary policy are effectively curbing foreign currency demand across both corporate and household sectors, stabilizing the currency despite sanctions.
Beyond the macro shifts, some intriguing business and personal finance trends hitting the headlines, affecting daily life, like a beloved burger chain quietly closing lots of locations.
Indeed. According to Yahoo News, a popular burger chain quietly closed 79 locations this year. Sparked concern among loyal customers, raises broader questions about its financial stability, long-term strategies in the super-competitive fast food industry. Points to potential shifts in consumer preferences, rising costs, maybe market saturation.
On the investment front, any hot tips for navigating this uncertainty?
Well, Investopedia recommends small-cap stocks as potential promising investments during periods of trade uncertainty. Small-cap stocks, companies with relatively small market capitalization, often cited as having potential mispricings because they're less scrutinized by major analysts. So, advice for those looking to identify potentially undervalued assets amidst current fluctuations.
And from the world of celebrity, YouTube and boxing star, Jake Paul made a massive real estate move. Highlights significant wealth accumulation.
Yeah, Jake Paul closed one of the largest real estate deals in Georgia, U.S. history, a staggering $39 million purchase of a 5,600-acre ranch. Highlights his significant investment in tangible assets like real estate, shows diversification beyond online and sports ventures, demonstrates the immense wealth possible through modern digital entertainment.
For our listeners planning summer getaways, some clever money-saving hacks making waves. Always welcome news.
The BBC reported clever summer holiday money-saving tips helped people save hundreds of pounds. Tips often include budget-friendly travel, accommodation strategies, opting for self-catering, using loyalty programs, booking off-peak, practical advice for cost-effective vacations amidst rising living expenses.
And for those considering an electric vehicle, the UK government's making a significant pledge.
The UK government pledged to make electric cars more affordable to purchase, aims to boost adoption of environmentally friendly vehicles, reflects that global trend towards sustainable transportation driven by climate goals, push to incentivize green tech through subsidies or tax breaks, accelerate market transition.
For listeners approaching a certain age, a key retirement planning note from Yahoo Finance.
Right. Turning 65 marks a cascade of significant retirement milestones for many in the U.S., including Medicare eligibility, beginning the federal health insurance program for those 65 plus, and employer health insurance often ending. Highlights a critical transition period, emphasizes the immense importance of timely, comprehensive retirement planning for healthcare coverage and financial security.
And a fascinating insight into family financial dynamics, where wealth introduces its own complexities.
People.com featured a story about a woman who declined her wealthy in-laws' request to quit her job unless they established a trust fund for her. Highlights the intricate dynamics of family expectations, financial independence, complexities arising when significant wealth and personal autonomy intersect within families, especially regarding career choices, financial security.
Lastly, a quick note on the BBC's internal affairs. Speaks to broader issues of trust in media.
Ofcom's chief, the UK's communications regulator, emphasized the crucial need for the BBC to handle controversies promptly and effectively given recent issues. Speaks to the broader challenges media organizations face globally in maintaining public trust, managing perception, ensuring accountability in their journalistic practices.
Moving into the world of science and technology now. Artificial intelligence continues to be, well, a double-edged sword, bringing incredible advancements, but also significant, sometimes unforeseen risks.
That's certainly true. On the advancement front, a UN research institute developed an AI refugee avatar, a significant stride in AI tech. This innovative project aims to raise awareness, educate on refugee issues through immersive storytelling, empathy-building simulations, offers a powerful new way for people to connect with complex humanitarian challenges, foster understanding, an example of AI for social good.
That sounds like a truly powerful application of AI for empathy, but I also saw a warning about AI therapy chatbots. That feels like a very delicate area for AI.
It is indeed a very delicate area, and the risks are significant. A recent study warns of significant risks in using AI therapy chatbots, highlighting that they tend to exhibit increased stigma towards certain conditions like alcohol dependence and schizophrenia.
Increased stigma.
Well, unlike human therapists trained in nuance and empathy, AI models, based on vast data sets, can inadvertently pick up and perpetuate societal biases present in that data. This raises serious concerns about the effectiveness, ethical implications, potential harm of relying on AI chatbots for mental health therapy. Emphasizes the immense importance of careful assessment, ongoing monitoring, and the clear understanding they are not a substitute for qualified human therapists, especially for complex conditions.
Right. The nuances of human empathy. AI isn't there yet.
Not yet. Unbiased judgment is still very much a frontier for AI.
And Elon Musk continues to push AI boundaries with massive investments across his companies.
Yes, Musk's SpaceX is considering investing a staggering $2 billion in Musk's xAI startup. Highlights his overarching interest in advancing both AI and space exploration through his interconnected companies.
And it was a partnership announced, too.
Yes, Telegram founder Pavel Durov announced a partnership with Musk's xAI to integrate Grok, xAI's chatbot, directly into the Telegram messaging app. This collaboration signifies a growing convergence between major tech figures, their vision for future digital interaction. Aims to make advanced AI more broadly accessible, integrated into daily communication platforms. Suggests a future where AI assistants are ubiquitous.
And speaking of digital interaction, more rules being considered to keep children safe online in the UK.
Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander stated that new age verification rules, set to begin later this month, would have a really important impact on protecting young users online. Reflects a growing global recognition of the urgent need for robust online safety regulations, especially for kids, as digital platforms become so central to their lives. These rules aim to create a safer digital environment by restricting access to harmful content based on age.
From the digital realm to the cosmic and ancient, let's talk space exploration and some truly remarkable terrestrial discoveries. Back to physical marvels.
We have a truly rare item up for auction. The largest piece of Mars discovered on Earth, known as NWA 16788, set to be auctioned at Sotheby's in New York, part of a natural history sale.
The largest piece of Mars, how big is it?
It's a substantial size, yeah. This extraordinary meteorite offers scientists as a direct sample of the red planet, provides invaluable data without a costly space mission. And for a private collector, it's a rare chance to literally own a piece of another planet. Illustrates that enduring human fascination with space.
And Israel is making its mark in space, too, with a significant satellite launch.
Israel Aerospace Industries, or IAI, launched the Dror-1 communications satellite. It's orbiting 36,000 kilometers, about 22,370 miles above Earth, done in collaboration with SpaceX. This advanced satellite enhances Israel's communications capabilities, more robust, secure data transmission, and contributes to global space exploration, demonstrating cutting-edge satellite tech.
On the ground, divers made an incredible ancient find in Italy, a direct link to the past.
Yeah, divers uncovered a 3,000-year-old clay figurine in Italy's Lake Bolsena, in the Lazio region of central Italy. This remarkable artifact, dating back to the Iron Age, revealed something even more extraordinary: human fingerprints.
Fingerprints from 3,000 years ago.
Exactly. The discovery is particularly fascinating because clear fingerprints offer a direct, tangible link to the individual who crafted it millennia ago, provides unique insights into ancient practices, daily life, even artistic techniques from that distant era. It's literally a touch from the past.
Finally, in food innovation, something that might redefine our cheese boards: lab-grown cheese.
A new lab-grown cheese is being introduced as an alternative to traditional dairy. This comes amidst reports of declining vegan cheese sales and growing consumer concerns about ultra-processed foods.
How is it made?
Using precision fermentation. Involves using microorganisms to produce dairy proteins without needing cows. The prospect of lab-grown cheese raises significant questions: consumer acceptance, environmental sustainability compared to traditional dairy, and crucial ethical and nutritional considerations for the future of food production.
So, a taste of a potentially very different culinary landscape.
Exactly. Potentially more sustainable options, but also requires a shift in how we perceive our food.
Shifting now to our planet's increasingly unpredictable nature. Environmental extremes, natural disasters making headlines across the globe. The UK, for instance, sweltering under an intense heat wave.
It was intense. The UK experienced its third heat wave of the year. Temperatures peaked at 33 degrees C, that's 91.4 degrees F, in Ross-on-Wye, England. Scotland saw remarkably high temperatures too, reaching 32 degrees C, 89.6 degrees F, its warmest day in 2 years. And Northern Ireland had its hottest day in nearly 3 years. These sweltering conditions significantly impacted daily life across the country, led to widespread public health advisories, concerns about heat-related illnesses, infrastructure strain.
And tragically, these extreme temperatures had devastating consequences, especially for people trying to cool off.
Yes, tragically. A 15-year-old boy died in a river incident on the River Kelvin in Glasgow, Scotland, on that hottest day. And in a grim illustration of the dangers, 3 other fatalities occurred in separate incidents on the same day across the UK. Highlights the severe risks associated with extreme heat, particularly when people seek relief in open water without proper safety awareness.
Is the heat wave over now?
Expected to end for most on Monday as cooler Atlantic air moves in, bringing temperatures closer to average. Heavy rain forecast, too. But hosepipe bans might still be imposed in some areas due to the prolonged dry conditions.
From heat waves to wildfires, parts of the U.S. grappling with rapidly spreading blazes, causing immense destruction.
Indeed. A rapidly growing fire near the Grand Canyon in Arizona led to evacuations in surrounding areas. Fueled by extremely dry conditions, strong winds, it spread quickly. posed a direct threat to communities' natural habitats. And tragically, a historic Grand Canyon Lodge, an iconic landmark near the South Rim, was destroyed by this wildfire, a significant cultural and architectural loss.
And fires elsewhere in the U.S., too.
Yes. Further west, evacuations were also ordered in the Gateway area of western Colorado due to ongoing wildfires. Underscores the widespread impact of drought and heat-on-fire conditions across the American West.
It's not just the U.S. facing wildfires, though. Syria also battled major blazes, but with a different outcome.
Yes. Wildfires in northwest Syria, specifically in the Latakia province, a coastal area, were successfully contained after a grueling 10-day battle. The fires caused extensive damage to forests, farmlands, significantly impacted local livelihoods, biodiversity. But what's remarkable here is the containment effort required crucial support from firefighting teams from multiple neighboring countries.
International cooperation.
Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, Qatar, Iraq all sent teams. Highlights the vital role of international cooperation, cross-border assistance, and disaster response, especially in regions already facing instability.
And across Europe, heavy rains caused issues. Missing persons reports.
Heavy rains in Catalonia, northeastern Spain, led to 2 people being reported missing. Authorities are actively searching for them amidst severe weather conditions, flash floods, strong winds. Demonstrates the immediate, dangerous impact of sudden, intense weather events.
Let's revisit the Texas floods now. The conversation around disaster response and political accountability went viral there, highlighting some deeply concerning aspects.
This incident really brought multiple contentious issues to the forefront. During a discussion about late flood alerts in Texas, former President Trump's response to affected families drew widespread condemnation. His decision to criticize the question as something only an evil person would ask, well, it was deemed sick beyond belief by critics, went viral.
Sparked debate about empathy and leadership.
Exactly. Then, further concerns were raised when U.S. media reported that U.S. regulators had modified official flood risk maps, apparently excluding numerous buildings at a camp in Texas where 27 children tragically lost their lives during severe floods.
Modified the maps.
That's the report. This revelation raised serious questions about the accuracy, transparency, integrity of flood risk assessments, and their direct implications for public safety, suggests a potential underestimation of danger zones.
And other potential contributing factors were raised, too.
Yes. There were questions about whether federal budget cuts, particularly to disaster preparedness agencies, and even the controversial practice of cloud seeding, might have worsened the Texas floods. An Al Jazeera fact-check piece looked into various claims. It really makes you think, what stands out to you about this intersection of extreme weather, human infrastructure, and political accountability?
It's incredibly complex.
These events powerfully highlight how natural disasters become deeply intertwined with policy decisions, preparedness levels, and the narratives shaped by political figures, often with devastating consequences for vulnerable communities.
Let's turn our attention now to public health concerns, starting with a rare but serious health story from Arizona in the U.S.
Yes, an Arizona resident tragically died from the plague, a rare infectious disease caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, typically transmitted to humans through flea bites from infected rodents or direct contact with infected animals.
Plague.
Yeah.
That sounds medieval.
It's extremely uncommon in modern times, yeah. Health authorities are actively investigating the source of this isolated case to prevent any further spread, understand the local environmental factors.
And in the UK, a tragic measles surge is prompting urgent action from health officials.
A child at Liverpool's Alderhay Children's Hospital sadly succumbed to measles amid a significant surge in cases. Measles is highly contagious, can lead to severe complications, especially in unvaccinated people. Health officials across the UK are now urgently urging people to get the measles vaccine if they're not up to date. Highlights the critical importance of widespread vaccination for herd immunity, preventing the spread of this entirely preventable disease. It's a serious public health threat.
The UK healthcare system, the NHS, also facing potential strikes from doctors.
The UK Health Secretary and the British Medical Association, BMA, the doctors' union, are set to meet, discussing measures to prevent potential widespread strikes by NHS doctors.
What are doctors asking for? Well,
they've indicated strike action would only be halted if discussions result in an acceptable proposal on pay and working conditions. The government's current offer is a 5.4% raise. The BMA argues that's insufficient to address years of real terms pay cuts and the rising cost of living. These talks are crucial to avoid significant disruptions in healthcare services.
And from the U.S., a controversial story about COVID vaccine doses, ultimately ending with drop charges.
Charges against a Utah doctor accused of intentionally throwing away $28,000 worth of COVID vaccine doses were ultimately dropped. The initial accusations sparked public outrage, highlighted concerns about vaccine waste during the pandemic. While the specific reasons for dismissal weren't detailed, it marks the end of a controversial legal case that got national attention.
A campaign is underway to change cosmetic labeling for allergy sufferers, a crucial consumer safety issue.
Campaigners are strongly arguing that cosmetic ingredients on Latin makeup labels, especially imports or those sold in diverse markets, should be listed in English to protect people with allergies. Currently, many products might only list ingredients in the original language, making it hard for consumers with severe allergies to identify potential irritants or allergens. Points to a call for clearer, standardized, multilingual labeling for better consumer safety, accessibility.
On a slightly lighter note, a simple fitness tip from Japan gaining traction.
Just 30 minutes a day of what's called Japanese walking, specifically interval walking training, IWT, may significantly help you get in shape. IWT involves alternating periods of brisk walking with slower paced walking.
Interval training, but walking.
Exactly. It's low impact, gained attention for effectiveness in improving cardiovascular health, muscular strength, offers an accessible fitness strategy for many.
Moving to immigration and social tensions now, a tragic and concerning story from California.
A California farm worker, Jamie Alanis, survived a harrowing 30-foot fall from a greenhouse roof during a chaotic ICE raid, but tragically passed away later due to his injuries.
Awful.
This devastating incident raises significant concerns about the safety, human rights, treatment of immigrant workers during such enforcement operations, and the tragic, often fatal consequences from aggressive tactics. Sparks calls for greater oversight, accountability of immigration agencies,
And further highlighting concerns about U.S. immigration enforcement, a controversial admission from a former border czar.
Tom Homan, who served as border czar during the Trump administration, reportedly admitted U.S. citizens are being swept up in immigration raids. This happened during a confrontational exchange with a heckler. This admission highlights a critical, concerning unintended consequence of broad, often indiscriminate enforcement tactics, where individuals legally in the country, including U.S. citizens, can be mistakenly apprehended or detained, leads to significant legal personal distress.
And new U.S. deportation policies seem set to accelerate removals, potentially with limited safeguards.
An internal ICE memo reveals the U.S. may begin deporting migrants to third countries, meaning countries other than their origin country, within as little as 6 hours of notice. And critically, without explicitly verifying the safety of those destinations.
6 hours, without checking safety.
That's what the memo suggests, following a recent Supreme Court decision broadening the government's ability to expedite removals. Critics argue these drastic changes endanger lives. Migrants could be sent to countries facing persecution or unsafe conditions, and it bypasses fundamental due process rights, raises serious human rights concerns about the speed, lack of verification in these expedited deportations.
Finally, in Spain, violent clashes erupted over immigration tensions, reflecting a deepening societal divide.
Violent clashes erupted in Torre Pacheco, a town in southeastern Spain, escalated pre-existing tensions over immigration, public safety, involved direct confrontations between local residents, far-right groups, and North African migrants, followed an alleged assault on an elderly man by a Moroccan national, which inflamed the situation.
Highlighting deeper divisions.
Absolutely. This incident highlights the deepening divide in Spanish society over immigration, a highly politicized issue. The far-right Vox Party recently pledged to deport millions of migrants if elected. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez advocates for migrant integration, a more humanitarian approach. Exemplifies the intense political, social polarization surrounding immigration across much of Europe.
Let's close this section with some justice and crime news that, while specific, carries broader implications for society and accountability.
A truly distressing discovery came to light in the UK. Catherine, an individual whose identity wasn't detailed, received a list. Revealed shocking evidence about the burial of 796 dead children, babies and toddlers in a garden.
796. In a garden. That's horrifying.
Profoundly unsettling discovery, wide-ranging implications for social services, historical care institutions, accountability for past injustices, likely sparking major investigations.
And a bizarre case of impersonation in Florida with significant financial and safety implications.
A Florida man faces a staggering $3.6 million in fines. Allegedly impersonated his deceased father, conducted 724 building inspections using his father's engineering license. Highlights serious consequences of identity fraud, misuse of professional licenses, and the potential dangers to public safety when vital services like building inspections are compromised by fraud.
A major drug bust in Germany, indicating large-scale trafficking.
Police and prosecutors in eastern Germany uncovered a significant drug bust, 1.7 million Captagon pills, hidden within delivery pallets at a greengrocer.
Captagon.
An amphetamine-type stimulant, often associated with conflict zones in the Middle East. This is a substantial seizure in an efforts to combat international drug trafficking. Indicates a large-scale criminal operation trying to smuggle illicit substances into Europe.
And a concerning claim from Ukraine regarding a slain intelligence officer.
Kiev says 2 people accused of working for Russia and shooting dead a Ukrainian intelligence officer were killed. Speaks to the ongoing covert operations, counterintelligence efforts, high stakes of the conflict beyond the visible front lines. Highlights the dangerous nature of espionage, sabotage in wartime.
Finally, a sports-related crime story involving a high-profile athlete.
Cleveland Browns player Quinshon Judkins, an American football running back, is currently facing a charge of misdemeanor domestic battery. A developing legal situation for the athlete will undoubtedly be closely monitored as it proceeds through the justice system. Raises questions about athlete conduct off the field.
Okay, let's lighten the mood a bit now and dive into the sports and culture corner. Wimbledon certainly delivered some thrilling moments and historic wins this year.
Absolutely, it was a captivating tournament. In women's singles, Poland's Iga Swiatek was just dominant. Beat Amanda Anisimova 6-0 to claim her first Wimbledon title.
A gobble bagel.
Exactly. This historic 57-minute victory marks Swiatek's 6th Grand Slam title overall. Particularly notable, it's the first time that scoreline has happened in a women's Wimbledon singles final since 1911. Just remarkable dominance.
And the men's singles final was a highly anticipated rematch. 2 of the sport's most exciting young talents going head-to-head again.
Indeed. Italy's Jannik Sinner defeated Spain's Carlos Alcaraz in a thrilling match. Over 5 hours, 4 sets. Claimed his first Wimbledon title.
Revenge for the French Open loss.
Sweet revenge for Sinner, yeah, for losing to Alcaraz at Roland Garros just over a month ago. Their burgeoning rivalry is quickly becoming one of the most compelling in men's tennis. Promises many more epic showdowns.
And a little bit of history was made in the men's doubles. A British triumph for the home crowd.
Julian Cash and Lloyd Glasspool made history, became the first all-British men's doubles winners at Wimbledon since 1936.
Wow, that's a long time.
Nearly 9 decades. Their victory, met with immense enthusiasm from the British crowd, marked a significant achievement for British tennis, breaking that long drought.
Moving from the courts to the crease. The cricket pitch also saw its share of drama this week.
It certainly did. India leveled up with England in the 3rd test at Lord's. Tempers flared significantly throughout the match. There was a notable moment where India's bowling coach pointed out India itself had engaged in time-wasting earlier, despite complaining about England's tactics. Added a layer of irony.
About calling the kettle black.
Something like that. India's Washington Sundar took key wickets at crucial moments, and Jasprit Bumrah delivered a corker of a Yorker, an exceptionally fast, accurate delivery. Stellar individual performances amidst the high stakes.
In golf, Rory McIlroy was contending again at the Scottish Open, a major warm-up for the Open Championship.
Rory McIlroy delivered a stellar performance at the Scottish Open. Initially took the lead, looked set for victory. However, Christopher Gotterup ultimately secured victory, fending off McIlroy in a close contest. A tight finish that kept golf fans on edge.
And in UFC, we had a very memorable, if somewhat controversial celebration from Derek Lewis. Some celebrations are just unforgettable.
You know, some celebrations just transcend the sport, become iconic for better or worse. Derek Lewis demolished Taliesin Teixeira in just 35 seconds at UFC Nashville. An explosive knockout, but it was his controversial, yet undoubtedly entertaining celebration ripping off his shorts, mooning the crowd that stole the headlines. Definitely something fans won't soon forget. Sparked quite the debate about showmanship versus decorum in pro sports.
On the football or soccer front.
Yes.
Germany progressing in Euro 2025, but facing some significant hurdles.
Germany progressed, yeah, but facing significant problems, particularly with defensive challenges, suggests while their offense is strong, their backline might be a vulnerability as they advance. Meanwhile, Lamine Yamal, that prodigious talent from Spain, turning 18, taking center stage at Barcelona, already showcasing incredible skill, even teasing fans about taking the iconic number 10 jersey previously worn by Messi.
Big shoes to fill.
Huge. And Arsenal, the English Premier League club, reportedly close to finalizing a deal for striker Victor Gyökeres, a significant transfer move potentially reshaping their attack.
For baseball fans, some team frustration and a look ahead to draft predictions.
The Philadelphia Phillies expressed considerable frustration after Milwaukee Brewers rookie Jacob Misiorowski was unexpectedly selected for the All-Star team after only 5 starts. Some called it a joke, highlights the subjective nature of All-Star selections. Meanwhile, MLB Pipeline released its final mock draft predictions. Gives fans a glimpse into future stars who their favorite teams might pick.
And in cycling, a dramatic sprint finish in the Tour de France on stage 9.
Tim Merlier, the Belgian sprinter, won the sprint finish, denied an epic breakaway triumph to Mathieu van der Poel, the Dutch cyclist, a classic moment of strategic racing. Powerful breakaway rider reeled in at the last moment by the raw speed of the sprinters, showcases the unpredictable, thrilling nature of the sport.
Beyond sports, some cultural and historical events that invite reflection. Live Aid recently hit its 40th anniversary.
Yeah, an article reflected on the 40th anniversary of Live Aid, that monumental 1985 dual-venue concert for Ethiopian famine relief, discussed its profound impact but also raised questions about long-term effectiveness, the delicate balance between hope and hype in the international aid industry, prompts a critical reevaluation of such large-scale humanitarian efforts and their legacy.
A French feminist icon was also honored for her bravery, leading to significant legal reforms.
Gisèle Pellicot, a renowned French feminist icon, awarded France's highest civic honor, the Legion of Honor, for her extraordinary bravery during a trial that ultimately led to crucial reforms in France's rape legislation. Her courage in coming forward, testifying in a landmark case, had a profound, lasting impact on legal protections for victims of sexual assault in France.
In Italy, controversy surrounding a prominent Russian conductor highlights the ongoing debate about politics and art.
Italian authorities allowed Valery Gergiev, a prominent Russian conductor, known Putin supporter, to conduct, defied an existing EU ban on pro-Kremlin figures. The governor of Italy's Campania region, Vincenzo De Luca, notably defended the performance, insisted culture and art should remain apolitical spaces, argued for artistic freedom regardless of political affiliation.
Reigniting that debate.
Exactly. The contentious debate on the intersection of politics and arts. Should cultural figures be held accountable for political affiliations? Or should art transcend such boundaries?
And a solemn memorial in Japan for a tragic maritime incident.
Relatives of passengers who died or went missing when that Kazuai tour boat sank off the Shiratoko Peninsula in Hokkaido, northern Japan, back in April 2022. They paid tribute to their loved ones at sea on Sunday. A heartbreaking annual remembrance ceremony honoring the victims, seeking closure for families.
On a much lighter note, also in Hokkaido, some hidden culinary gems discovered for road trippers.
A food writer discovered hidden gem bakeries in Kamikawa, a district in Hokkaido, offering delightful culinary experiences for road trippers exploring the region's famous lavender fields. A pleasant reminder of charming local delights, unique experiences beyond the major headlines.
Finally, the annual 12th of July parades in Northern Ireland, a significant cultural and historical event.
Thousands of Orange Order members joined streets across Northern Ireland for the annual 12th of July parades, commemorating the Battle of the Boyne in 1690, a pivotal moment in British and Irish history. This annual event is deeply significant culturally and historically for many in the region, particularly the Protestant community, reinforces identity, historical narratives.
And that brings us to the end of another incredibly dense deep dive. From the complexities of global politics and economic shifts where, the market dances to its own tune, to the quiet determination of athletes and the ethical dilemmas posed by new technologies like AI and therapy. We've covered a lot of ground today.
It truly highlights how interconnected our world is, doesn't it? What's fascinating here is how seemingly disparate events, from debates over ancient practices in Russia to the profound implications of AI on mental health, or even subtle shifts in global trade, often echo larger underlying trends, pushing us to constantly question assumptions, consider multiple viewpoints that shape our understanding.
Absolutely. And that leads us to our final thought for you to ponder. as technology continues to advance at an astonishing pace, bringing both incredible solutions and, well, unexpected risks and societal shifts. How do we ensure that our pursuit of progress is matched by a steadfast commitment to human well-being and the fundamental freedoms that underpin a healthy society? It's a question that really cuts across every segment we explore today, doesn't it? From AI ethics and online safety to political accountability and disaster response.
A critical question for our rapidly evolving world, and one that requires constant vigilance, nuanced understanding, and critical thinking from all of us. Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.
We hope this deep dive has given you some surprising facts, maybe a clear understanding of the complex forces shaping our world, and perhaps a new lens through which to view tomorrow's headlines. Until next time, stay curious and keep digging deeper.